with the proper tools, the support and the challenge, you can get to a place where you move from bypass to connection and feeling grounded, centered, powerful in your body, fully self-expressed, and healthy. Welcome to another episode of Trigger Proof, a show dedicated to helping people over the age of 30 who are feeling stuck in their relationship limbo. Feeling stuck, should I stay, should I go? Which also translates often into purpose. What am I doing here? Wanting to make that leap to the next level, wanting to have a greater purpose for their lives and feel more connected with themselves, which then translates into your health. This is something that I discovered in my 18 years as a chiropractor, that patients coming in with stress-related disorders were dealing with disconnection and alignment issues in their lives, in their relationships, and most importantly, with themselves. And this show is dedicated to those who are on a spiritual, emotional life path that desires expansion, more love, and greater intimacy. This is what I discovered on my journey as well. Today's episode, we're actually going to be talking about signs that you're bypassing. Trigger proof basically doesn't mean triggerless. It means trigger savvy. And this all came to me out of a necessity based on the discoveries in my own recovery. I was in a relationship for about 4 years that was completely out of alignment, and I was bypassing the entire time. There was a truth that I was not wanting to admit. There was a disconnection, it wasn't in alignment, and instead of actually facing it and dealing with the uncomfortable emotions which are associated with the truth, I completely bypassed it, swept it under the rug, and it brewed this unconscious toxic relationship behavior between the both of us, which ended up becoming completely volatile and aggressive. And the gift of that entire thing was a wake-up call that woke both of us up to then start to really learn that we were actually not in alignment. We weren't actually doing the necessary healing work, and there was something that we completely skipped over, which was old childhood trauma and wounding that was stuck in the body. So I went on a path. I put a pause on teaching. I put a pause on healing others and distracting myself, which is another form of bypass, by teaching other people and coaching other people and being important in the world. And I completely went inside, got the right mentors who turned out to become good friends of mine, connected with a community and a tribe, all of these things that I'm going to share in today's episode. And lo and behold, healing has happened, and a profound shift in the level of self-love, intimacy with myself and with other people, connection to a cause and a purpose, and to boot, a greater awareness and control of my emotions and anxiety levels. Most of the time, patients are going into hospitals and doctors because of an unresolved childhood wound that leads to anxiety, which then leads to all sorts of behaviors like addictions, relationships that are toxic, workaholism, completely distracting yourself. And it's my mission and purpose to really find the singularity model, the one model that I've developed to help with all of those things, which at the end of the day equates to a lack of self-love. Really, today and every episode is about the path to self-love. And without getting that part right, then no relationships are healthy. No relationships will ever fill what's missing inside. No amount of success, no amount of money, no amount of fame, no amount of material things, no amount of things that you can buy is ever going to fill that void that's missing inside. And as a result, the way it shows up in relationships is you become easily triggered. Today's episode has been inspired by a number of clients that have reached out to help them with this relationship limbo, to help them with career limbo, a lack of purpose, a lack of forward movement, overwhelm. All of these symptoms, basically, when we narrowed it down, there was bypass going on. And it was very important for me to share this message with you and actually give you the signs and symptoms to look for within yourself so that you can expand in self-awareness and then take a powerful action step to manifest health, to manifest the life that you actually desire. And really, when I've interviewed thousands of people over my career, we all really want the same thing. We want to feel connected with ourselves. We want to feel comfortable in our skin. We want to have some sort of control over our own emotional volatility. We do not want to be at the effect of externals. What do I mean by that? I mean heavily running away from criticism and fearing what other people think of you, and heavily running towards praise and admiration. That was me. Very, like I just wanted to be liked by everyone, and I was paralyzingly afraid and resistant to any form of criticism or critical feedback. And I was running towards getting external praise and admiration and validation. And when we live that way, we don't resolve this and upgrade our intimacy with ourselves, then we are not internally governed. We are externally governed, and we get triggered easily. And instead of responding powerfully and having control of the situation and the power to create, we are run by people, places, things, objects outside of us. And there is no fulfillment in that. There is nothing that will ever be enough. I discovered that the hard way. So today we're really going to go into the ins and outs of what spiritual bypassing is, what bypassing is in general, and I want you to be able to see yourself and hopefully call yourself forward to be able to make a difference so that you have a say in creating the experiences of your life. So I wanted to start by going through what really bypass is. Bypass, if you really look at it, whether it's a heart bypass or a highway bypass, it is a distraction. It is going around the real thing, the event. It is what we have a tendency to do to avoid. It's when you want to avoid traffic, you do a bypass. If you have a heart bypass surgery, there's a blockage, so they create a bypass, another route for the artery so that blood flow can get to the different areas of the heart. A bypass is what we normally do, which is pretty much an epidemic. Most of the time, it's an unconscious behavior that we do to avoid painful feelings. It's our ego defense mechanism that our identity creates, a wall around us to protect ourselves from uncomfortable emotions. And the solution is not a comfortable one, but to get it, when you get it right, you actually have a say in creating your life. You can have healthier relationships. When you learn how to catch yourself bypassing and choose again, you now have an ability to create health, create amazing relationships, and take action towards the fulfillment of your dreams, crossing the bridge of fear. At the end of the day, it's fear of emotions that cause us to bypass. So I want to invite Dr. Russell Kennedy to talk a little bit about his experience with bypassing, not from just a medical perspective, but also from the perspective of his patients that he sees and the clients that we work with, and the tendency that the ego has to avoid discomfort. Dr. Russ, I got you right here. What's going on? By the way, happy anniversary. Today is your third anniversary.
Third year anniversary, married to Cynthia. Yeah, it's great. It's great. And I got a new hair gel, so I look a little bit like Christopher Walken today. I don't know. Wow, Nima, thank you.
And humor is a good form of bypassing, isn't it?
It is. It is a fantastic form of bypassing. I know a lot of people that when you get close to their emotions, they will start making jokes, and I do the same thing. I do exactly the same thing.
I just met a new friend recently. We've just become connected, and continuously, every time we get into a little bit of intimate conversation, all of a sudden, the jokes come, the laughter comes, and I'm just like, there's some bypass going on there. So humor is one of the forms of bypass. Can you talk a little bit more about bypass? I mean, you're a neuroscientist. Why do we bypass? What is this unconscious behavior? Why do we do it? And can you give some examples of what you've seen?
Yeah, we bypass because it's just too uncomfortable to be in. So when you are actually in your body in emotion and it's too uncomfortable, then we bypass up into our heads and we try and solve everything cognitively. And one of the things I love to say is, you can't solve a feeling problem. You can't think your way out of a feeling problem. You have to actually feel it. Yeah. So when I work with people, and you know this too, when we work with people, if someone isn't vulnerable, if someone doesn't have that ability to kind of open up and say, yeah, this is what's happening for me, whatever, they're just solidly cut off. I use the term ADD because we use that. So basically ADD is like addictions, distractions, and humor is one of them, and disconnection. Those are the three things that we type when we start getting too close to someone. We go into ADD and we distract from it because it's just too uncomfortable to be in our bodies. So when it's too uncomfortable to be in our bodies, we have to find a way, an adaptation to not do that anymore.
So what you're saying is addiction, distraction, and did you say
disconnection?
Dissociation or disconnection.
Yeah.
The first thing that we do is, because this is all an unconscious thing. Absolutely. So the first thing to do is awareness. It's like waking up and kind of getting into your body and going, holy crap, I've been binge watching Netflix for the last 3-4 days. Whoa, yeah. Hold on one second. What am I bypassing? What emotion am I afraid of feeling? And so that's a good sign. So what you're saying is when you have an addiction, you have a distraction or a dissociation, to awaken yourself and go, wow, there I go again, bypassing.
Yeah, it's a form of awareness because, just like you said at the start of the show, when you use humor, just be aware, I'm using humor right now to distract from something.
I'm totally bypassing right now. I'm using humor. And so it's not to say, here's the thing, what I'm getting from this conversation is, it's not if you do it, it's when you do it.
Yeah,
and we all do it. This is something that we all do. It's not to say, oh, I'm standing here teaching about spiritual and emotional bypassing. I'm going to give some of the signs and the symptoms. I do it. However, the difference now is that I have a self-awareness of when I'm doing it, and when I can become aware and I can see it, I don't have to beat it.
And when you become aware of it, you can do something about it. You can talk to a counselor, you can talk to a friend, you can talk to your partner and say, this is what's come up for me. My instinct is to kind of avoid it and go on the computer or distract into something else. But what I'd really like to do is just, talk with you about it right now. I may not be able to stay in it for a long period of time, but just realize that I do want to get at it, because the people that can't be vulnerable, the people that can't share it, typically is unconscious. So they don't even realize it.
They don't even realize they're doing it.
They feel this pain, and it's like, rather than actually explore what the pain is, because it's kind of like, I call it boomeranging. As soon as you get this unconscious pain, you boomerang away from it and you never actually deal with it. So every time you think of it, you kind of go into it, you boomerang out of it, so it never gets dealt with, and it sticks with you for the rest of your life. So that's what bypassing is. I have people who practice mindfulness. They don't want to deal with the past.
Yeah.
And I say, unless you solve the past, and I think overview is a brilliant way of doing that, unless you get some coherent narrative or some explanation of the past, you're just going to keep reliving it. Totally. And so it's just going in there and not bypassing your way out of it, because until you deal with it, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Russ. Can you hang out here and call on you a little bit later?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks, buddy. So here's the key, is that we're all doing it. We're bypassing consistently. It's not if I'm bypassing, it's when. It's my awareness, self-awareness, to be able to catch myself and then choose again. This game of becoming trigger-proof is a game of conscious awareness. 95% of the time, past the age of 35, we are spending our days in complete unconscious awareness. That was me until I had my wake-up call, which is, my mess is my message. This is why I love teaching it right now. And so one of the signs, basically, I wanted to give you this bypassing this. What are some of the signs so that you can recognize it within yourself? And I'd love for you to write in the comment section if you can relate to any of this whatsoever. We have a few people on right now. If you can relate to any of these, or you catch yourself doing this, I'd love to hear from you. Let me know what some of these signs and symptoms are for you. So the first one is one of the things that I see consistently. I use the word over-vigilant. You can use hyper-vigilant or over-vigilant emphasis on positivity. So whenever you see, here's the thing, we have a light and a dark. There's a positive and a negative within all of us. Half of the earth at any given time is bathed in sunlight, and the other half is completely bathed in darkness. And that is consistent. In other words, you have two sides to you, a saint and a sinner. However, most of the time, as we are raised with religious idealisms, with societal norms and expectations, to actually denounce or get rid of half of ourselves. So what we do is we take those elastic bands and we keep snapping them. Oh, I have a negative thought, I have a negative thought, I have a negative thought. And everybody who speaks around you, who, especially if they're going through a really rough time, they're being negative all the time and they feel like they're pulling you down. If you are going around, and it's great to uplift people. This is what I do for a living. As a chiropractor, people are coming in a downward state. My job is to be centered and present and purpose-driven, so that I can elevate people with my level of energy. Whether you're laying on on my table, or we're doing a Skype call, or even as you're watching right now, it's my duty and obligation as a servant of humanity to work on bringing myself to a centered place, so that I can help elevate people's energy. If I was coming at you completely pendulum swinging, overtly positivity, woohoo, positive, there would be this internal bullshit detector within you that'd be like, all right, Nima, quit your bullshit. All right, nobody is overtly one-sidedly positive. Okay, and when you have an over-vigilant emphasis on positivity and you're trying to positivize everyone around you and remove and eliminate negativity, you could be bypassing. I'm not judging, because I went through that phase as well, until I realized that I didn't have to get rid of half of myself in order to love myself. This could be you, and pardon the sound, there's some construction going on, and this is a live show. So you're gonna have to forgive me for that. But if you are noticing that you have an over-vigilant emphasis on positivity rather than embracing the present moment, you could be spiritually bypassing, because at any given moment, in this moment, have pleasure and pain happening in my life. I have support and I have challenge. And the more that I can embrace both sides of me, the more comfortable I am in my skin, the more what we call integrated that we are, and the more powerful and authentic that we are. The second sign that you're spiritually bypassing is spiritual arrogance. Now, this can happen if you're in a religion and you're proselytizing other people and saying that they are wayward and they're going to hell, and this is a form of spiritual bypass. It's an ego-based judgment that separates you from other people, whereas your soul, your higher self, feels connected to everyone all around you and does not see separation, whereas your lower-minded ego completely sees separation, wants to avoid, wants to compare, and start to see itself as superior as a compensation for its unworthiness. If you are walking around, even if you're in the spiritual conscious community, which sometimes when I'm there, it means sometimes to me when someone says we're in the conscious community, I sometimes say they probably don't wear deodorant. You could be spiritually bypassing because of your arrogance. See what I just did there when I said they don't wear deodorant? That's my spiritual awareness. That's me and ego. That's exactly a form of bypass. So guilty as charged as well, but this is one of the signs that you're bypassing. The difference isn't that if you're doing it, it's when you're doing it, are you able to call yourself out and have that self-awareness? like I just did right there. I had that self-awareness. Anytime you're looking down on others and you're claiming yourself as being enlightened, I have somebody that I know who claims themselves as 4th or 5th level of enlightenment, endowed by the Buddha or whatever. Run. You really want to run from that person, because nobody has this error. Nobody really has claim to enlightenment. We can catch glimpses. The second that I claim myself as being enlightened, I am outside of, I'm completely in ego and outside of soul awareness and consciousness, because when I'm truly connected, I don't see a separation from you and me. I'm just here to serve. I see myself as this hollow reed. One of the prayers that I really resonate with in the Baha'i faith is when they say, "O Lord, make me a hollow reed from which the pith of self hath been blown, so that I may become a clear channel through which your love may flow to others." So this could be God, this can be universal force, I don't care what you call it, but when you are fully dialed in and connected, you are this hollow reed, you're a clear channel, and that's your highest self. Number 3, a sign that you might be bypassing. There was a movie that I watched called Into the Wild, and it was a story of this young man who was so, tired of the world and tired of material things and living a certain way, and he just said, I'm off. He goes off to Alaska on a solo trip to just live by himself, and he basically goes into the wild, and he dies in the wild. And he took one final photo, and he journaled, and they found his journal, and at the end he basically said, life is only meaningful when it's shared. And so if you find yourself overtly and overly detaching yourself from the world, denouncing the planet, denouncing everybody, you could be bypassing. It's a very convenient way of deflecting and avoiding uncomfortable emotions. And that's the truth. Next one is mindfulness practices. Now, this might piss off some of you, but I discovered myself as doing a student of John Demartini's, a student of Byron Katie's, and all of this emotional work that I was doing was to avoid pain, was to avoid the experience of pain. One of my all-star clients that came in to see me was also like that. So when she reached out to me, I could totally see myself in her. Nagina was a chiropractor in the UK who was really stuck in her life. She'd been doing mindfulness practices, doing John Demartini's work, and working on cognitive methods to try to heal her from the anger and grief of not losing one child, but 2 children under the age of 3 with neurodevelopmental disorders. And soon as I talked to her the first time, she reached out to me on a discovery call. I basically could sense right away. She said, I've done the Demartini breakthrough experience. I did call and see, which is all about loss and grief, and I still feel stuck. Turns out she was doing exactly what I was doing. She was using emotional work to bypass the pain, the discomfort, and the grief of losing 2 children, which you could totally, I can't blame her either, because that would be too difficult for her to bear. And so when we started working together, an interesting thing happened. I told her, I basically said, you're effing bypassing and you know it. And she basically said, okay, so what do I do? So what we had her do was to actually, for 2 weeks, after that first session, I had her pretty much connecting with her pain. I had her screaming, I had her yelling. I asked her, I said, so how upset are you at God? She goes, I'm angry with God. And what she was doing was she was suppressing it. She wasn't allowing herself to actually experience it. So I created a safe container for her to actually experience her grief. Because bypass is very common with grief. Many people have gone decades and still not dealt with it. And the way that will show up in your life is you feel stuck. You feel disconnected from yourself. You don't know what your purpose is. And you feel a separation from others. You feel like there's a wall between you and other people. And that's how she was feeling. And so ever since we started doing this intimacy upgrade work, and she also came to one of our live trainings when I was in Barcelona, and we did the breath work. She basically fully embodied and experienced all her grief, which wasn't comfortable, but she came out feeling like a new person. And now she has, she was so inspired. She now works in Dubai. She has a clinic there. She wants us to, we're going to be spending December 7th to 9th there. And we're going to be doing the same thing. She's so inspired by it, and her life completely transformed. She's full of laughter. Her wealth has expanded, her impact, her influence, her messaging. She's on fire right now. And she's unstoppable. All because we stopped bypassing and we actually went into feeling. So mindfulness practices, be careful that you're not doing your yoga and meditation to try to run away from uncomfortable feelings. That's what we can definitely do things to transform that. And what Dr. Russ just said earlier, one classical way of bypassing is when you say, I don't want to go into my past. We don't have to go into my past. I attended Joe Dispenza's one week retreat in Spain last year. And I put up my hand and I asked him, and it's actually on YouTube right now, Dr. Joe Emotions. And I put up my hand and I said, if we don't go back and recontextualize our past, aren't we using this meditation to create our future as a form of bypass? Don't we need to actually go back there? And he gave me an 11-minute answer, which sounded really great. But he basically said, you don't need to go into your past. And what we've discovered in neuroscience, Jordan Peterson, and the work that we do is it's great to do mindfulness practices to create a future. But if you use that as a distraction from going back and actually sorting out and making sense with and completing the past, you, my friend, are bypassing 100%, because it's in the body and you cannot run away from that. You must do those mindfulness practices, which are important, but it must also be, there must be a vigilance to go back to those old stories and to turn them around. Because if you don't get that part right, you will forever be running into them, wondering, why is this not working? And you will never really feel safe in your body. This is a fact, and we've been able to see person after person who's been doing these mindfulness practices go back, or who've been dealing with health problems, go back and we take a look at those things that they've been avoiding, and all of a sudden we change that story through these powerful magical tools that we have at our disposal. And lo and behold, they don't feel any trigger or remorse or grief when they think back to those old traumatic events. I'd like to have Dr. Russ come back and share a little bit about why that's important in the brain instead of bypassing and running away from those old emotions. Why is it so important in our nervous system to go back and recontextualize them instead of running away from them?
Well, because the trauma is held in your body as well as your mind. We think that the mind holds all our old unresolved traumas. We think the mind holds all our unresolved traumas when it's actually the nervous system. It's held in the body as well as the mind. So if you don't bring those issues up from your body and resolve them at a nervous system level, which means your mind and your body, it will always stay present. When I used to teach yoga, just about every class there'd be somebody who break into tears, because we hold issues in our tissues. We hold these things, and when we move a certain way, we sometimes bring them up. And I would talk to people after. I said, well, what was it?
You sure it wasn't because you're like a yoga Nazi and you're mean to them? You're being mean?
No, I wasn't.
Quite an asshole sometimes.
No, it's not a particularly tough pose or anything like that. Usually twists. When people get into twists, it brings something out, because that your body, as a chiropractor, you know that your spine doesn't typically twist, right? It goes forward, backward, side to side. But twisting is something that we do in yoga, and that would be a pose that I would see a lot of people actually start getting some emotion coming up, because their nervous system is they've been holding off.
Same with us after an adjustment. How many times has, and maybe it's because I'm an asshole or I'm mean or whatever, but many times it was because of the fact that they were holding it in their tissues at the past. in a nervous system level. And so just by releasing it with an adjustment, all of a sudden, the tears start to flow. And they're like, I don't know why this is happening. I'm like, let it go. Let it out, brother. Let it out, sister.
And then they apologize, right? They apologize. I shouldn't be this emotional. I'm sorry about this. I'm sorry. Because that is an actual sort of bona fide measure that they were holding something down. When they apologize for letting it out, it shows that they've been holding it down and they don't feel good about letting it out. Yeah. So we have issues in our tissues. We have these old unresolved traumas that sit in our body. And unless we deal with those old unresolved traumas at a body level, not just thinking about it, not just doing therapy about it, not just doing mindfulness, we do it at a body level, breath, yoga, whatever, qigong, whatever you want to do. But at a body level, you need to release this stuff because it's trapped in there. And like I was saying earlier on, it's like a boomerang. You go in and you approach it and it's like, no, this isn't safe. So we got to pull out. This isn't safe. So we got to pull out. And you never actually deal with the underlying problem. And that is the biggest problem with bypassing, is that you never deal with the underlying problem. So
it stays with you like a backpack as you're climbing a mountain, more rocks in that backpack.
And it gets heavier. And that's why people's symptoms get worse and worse and worse, because that unresolved trauma is asking to be released. And if you keep pushing it down or doing something else or distracting or, that disconnection, part of the ADD part there, you're disconnecting from other people. But most of all, you're disconnecting from yourself. You're disconnecting your mind from your body. And your mind is always pulling you away from your body. Probably because when you were younger, this unresolved trauma got stored in your body. It's uncomfortable. So going back down there is really painful. So what we do is we go, nope, not going down there. I'll try and solve it with humor. I'll try and solve it with distraction or addiction. So it's a matter of just being comfortable in your body and letting those things come up with a trusted therapist, counselor, friend, spouse, whatever. And then you can release this stuff, because if you don't release it, it stays in there for life.
Thank you. Dr. Russ, so grateful to have you on the show again, and enjoy your third year anniversary.
Sure. Thanks, bud. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care, brother. So we're talking about bypass. Now there's two forms of bypass that you are likely doing. One is conscious, one is unconscious. The conscious form of bypass is called suppression. This is what's happening when all of a sudden, if you're the type of person where emotions start coming up and then you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna cry. I'm just gonna stuff it down like this. One of the clients who just jumped into our program, Henro, he basically has been doing this. He literally did this when I was talking to him on our discovery call. He goes, I was taught to do this. And if you have British upbringing, European upbringing, or if you were living in an environment growing up where you weren't actually feeling safe to express yourself, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, you will likely do a conscious form of bypass, which is called suppression. There is another form of bypass that we do, which is unconscious, which is called repression. This is when memories are so painful that we don't even remember. We don't even want to remember. This is when often clients of ours will come to us and say, you know what? I had a totally amazing childhood. My childhood was amazing. There's one of the clients that came in, she was dealing with chronic pain, chronic anxiety, feeling disconnected from herself. And in our overview experience workshop, she goes, this is what she would always say, I don't remember my childhood. I mean, everything was good. I had amazing parents. Things were amazing. I had such a great childhood. Turns out, as we started doing the work and she connected to that, she realized she was bypassing. She was actually suppressing. She was bullied heavily as a kid. There was a sexual event that happened at the age of 7 to 16 where she was coming of age, and an older guy kind of forced himself on her. And there was a date rape that happened. Oh, what happened to that? I had a perfectly great upbringing. What she was actually doing was repression. So suppression is a conscious form of bypass, and repression is an unconscious. you don't even know that you're doing it. You don't even know that you don't even know. All you know is, right now, I don't feel safe in my body. I don't know who I am. My relationships are completely blocked and they're completely disconnected. I don't know if I should stay or I should go in my relationship. I don't know who I am. I have zero self-confidence. I can't look in a mirror and say, I love you. If you have any of those symptoms going on and you are not aware of where they come from, your past trauma, there could be a repression. It's really important for you to find out because your future actually depends on it. But this is the work. At the end of the day, it comes down to your unwillingness to experience pain. That's it. Let me repeat that. Let me say that again. At the end of the day, this whole problem has one major constraint: my inability to sit and experience physical and emotional pain. In other words, your relationship to, if you want to change this, your relationship to physical, emotional, financial, social pain must transform. You must cross a bridge of fear in order to get there. You cannot get to the promised land that you're looking for without slaying a dragon, if we can use a game analogy. You must slay a dragon. This is what's stopping you. This bypass is because there's a dragon that you're not willing to slay. And I'm here to share with you how to transform that. So when I went through this entire process and I was bypassing, and the gift of that experience of my breakup was for me to go inside and look at all of the places that I was bypassing. And I came across this model of this path to victory for myself, which then, as I do, I'm such a student of growth and healing. Everything that I learn, I integrate into my body, into my awareness, and then use it as a teacher, because one of my highest values is teaching. I teach what I most need to learn. So the answer to solving this riddle always comes back to a deeper, more intimate relationship with yourself. This is what I call your intimacy upgrade. So if you're wondering, should I stay, should I go? Going through a breakup, going through, I don't know what I should do with my career, I don't know what my purpose is. The answer every single time is, I want you to do this. I want you to look in the mirror, look into your own eyes and say, I must upgrade myself. I must upgrade myself. So it's an upgrade in all of these things. So what's the path? The first part of it is you must heal that nervous system. I was living in anxiety. My body wasn't feeling safe. I was constantly easily triggered. And it was super duper important for me to actually heal that nervous system. So the first step is nervous system regulation. Step number one, nervous system regulation. When you learn how to get that right, this is where I believe episode number 2 on YouTube, if you want to check it out, I go through the specific steps that we take our clients through. It starts with breath work. It goes into chiropractic care, exercise and nutrition, going into the habits and the routines, to nervous system and neurosensory attunement exercises, to living according to your highest values. And when you get all of that right, you then feel safe in your body. The next step is you must clear your past resentments. Let me say that again. You must clear your past resentments. I got on a call yesterday with a client, with somebody who was reaching out because she was feeling anxious constantly. She was feeling like, I feel so stuck in my life and I don't know where to go, even though I do have a cause and a purpose I really want. I'm just really stuck. Here was her problem. Her main constraint was she was completely haunted by her past. Her past was consistently in her present. And your past, by clearing your past resentments, this could also mean resentment towards yourself. In fact, it does mean you must clear the resentment towards yourself. All of the guilt, all of the shame, all of the things that have you feeling that you're not worthy of love must be reordered. You cannot bypass it with mindfulness practices. You cannot think your way out of a feeling problem caused by a past resentment towards yourself or somebody else. This is the step that most mindfulness practices completely avoid, which is one of the things that we really heavily talk about in our live trainings at the Overview Experience and in our programs that we do. We must go. In fact, whenever people are new clients on board, I have them make a list of their top 10 resentments and regrets in their life. And that's what we take and use the Overview Method tool on to help dissolve. The next part is you must learn how to dance with your dark passenger. What do I mean by that? I mean that ego shadow work of looking at that part of you that's trying to protect your wounded inner child, which constantly is whispering, you're not enough, you're not good enough, you're basically not enough. And without actually looking at that and getting uncomfortable and turning on the light and looking at all of the shitty things that you say to yourself and consciously shifting that script and healing and reparenting that part of you that has been completely wounded and feels it wasn't safe and wasn't worthy and didn't deserve love, you must be able to look at that and transform that. And when you heal that nervous system and you clear in the past resentments, all of a sudden you start to develop a sense of presence. People will start to notice that, wow, you're here, you're not so distracted, you're present in your body. When you've learned how to clear that past resentment and you've learned how to do that, the work on ego observation and shadow work, what ends up happening is you have a deep sense of understanding towards yourself. You then get you. You have empathy towards you. You become self-loving. You are more disciplined with yourself. And you start to have more understanding to others. One of I can think of two of our clients, one Vivian, who when she started with us hadn't spoken to her mother in 4 years. And after her first overview, she picked up the phone and called her mother and completely dissolved the resentment and was not only able to see herself and resource herself, but she was also able to see her mother from a completely different standpoint. And all of a sudden her confidence completely changed and she was able to actually look at herself in the mirror and get herself and have a sense of understanding. And when you've learned how to do that dark passenger ego shadow work and heal that wounded inner child, and you have a nervous system that's in balance, a neat thing happens. You start to develop authenticity. Instead of bypassing with humor, bypassing with stress, bypassing with mindfulness practices and running away from your problems, you actually feel authentic. People feel like, hey, you're a real person. You are integrated with your shadow. You don't pretend to be one-sided. I like you. You're real. It's like you're being the real you. And you then feel a greater sense of fulfillment. And this cannot happen without learning empathic communication, learning how to get into the world of other people, but not empath, not unconscious empathy, but being consciously empathetic, first by being empathetic to yourself, acknowledging yourself, being able to see yourself first, and then being able to put the oxygen mask on somebody else. And the last part of this is it takes a commitment to do so, because bypassing is going to be your default because of the fear bias that we have in our brains. We tend to seek pleasure and avoid pain. But it takes a commitment and a community of people who are up to the same game, who are up to changing their relationship with physical and emotional pain, who are there to both support you and challenge you, not just a support group validating your victim story. That's going to keep you stuck and you want to run away from that kind of situation. You want to go to somewhere where you are being challenged. Because if you don't choose challenges that inspire you, you will attract challenges that despire you. So it is critical that you move towards challenge and have a supportive community that's going to help support and challenge you on your way to that climb towards the ultimate, which is in the middle here, which is self-love. That's the holy grail. That's what we're all about. That's what every personal development program should be geared towards. There are many paths towards this. I couldn't look in a mirror last year and say I love you because I allowed outside voices to dictate how I felt inside. But through this path, I was then able to now get to a space where you can say whatever and there's people still saying whatever, and I can still look and go, nah, I know myself and I'm okay with who I am regardless of what anybody says about me. And it's a work in progress. This is something that I never can take my foot off the gas towards, because my ego default mechanisms will naturally want to go take me back into my fear biases. But with the proper tools, with the proper community, the support and the challenge, you can get to a place where you move from bypass to connection and feeling grounded, centered, powerful in your body, fully self-expressed and healthy. That's really what it's all about. So hopefully this has been of great value to you. Let me know in the comments section any questions that you have. Please, if anything that I'm saying is triggering you, don't worry. Write it out, send me a message. I would love to chat with you about it. If you're not already in our Art of Powerful Alignment group, please join the Art of Powerful Alignment and let's continue the conversation. I'd love to chat with you and interact with you. Maybe even if you have a question, this could be the topic of a new show. We're always looking for great ideas, and these great ideas usually come from client interactions and the questions that you come through. And by all means, in September, October, November, and December, we are doing the overview experience, which is limited now to 20 members because we do breath work and we want to make sure that everyone gets complete with their past stories somewhere on this planet: Vancouver, Sydney, Australia, Barcelona, Spain, or in Dubai in the Middle East. Please join us. If this is something that is enticing you, there's a little voice in your head that says, I'm scared, but I'm ready to actually stop bypassing and get connected, reach out, fill out an application, let me know what you want to work through. And me and my team of amazing facilitators are absolutely dedicated and committed to helping you get your outcomes. I've dedicated my whole life to this. There's nothing I enjoy more than teaching this, because I teach what I most need to learn. Thank you for another episode. We will see you next week, exactly at the same time, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. in Barcelona, and like 5 or 6 a.m. in Australia. Wherever you are, grateful that you are joining us. Thank you for your time. Thank you for following along in your DMs and your emails. I look forward to crossing paths with you somewhere on this beautiful planet, and we'll see you at the next perfect time.